How do you know when to use dit, dat, deze, or die in Dutch? And what's the difference between these words? In English, you only have this and that. For example, you can say this tree or that tree. In Dutch, you have 4 different words that correspond to this and that. Let's look at how it works. In English, you use this when an object is close to you, and that if an object is far away. In Dutch, we do the exact same thing. We use dit or deze when an object is close to you, and dat or die when an object is far away. For example, in English, you would say this tree, or I would say this tree because this tree is close to me. If I was talking about a tree that's far away, I would say that tree. In Dutch, I would talk about deze boom. Now, how do you know it's deze and not dit? Let's look at it in more detail. As you probably know, Dutch has 2 different genders for words. There are words that have de, and there are words with het. As you might know, tree is boom. It's de boom. So this is a de word. Huis, for example, is a het word, het huis. When we talk about this and that in Dutch, it's also very important to know if you're talking about a de word or a het word. So in order to use dit, dat, deze, and die correctly, you really need to know if the word you're talking about is a de word or a het word. One set is used for de words and the other set is used for het words. One is used for objects that are close to you, and the other ones are used for objects that are far away from you. So we can put it in this little matrix here. Maybe you can copy it and put it in your pocket and refer to it every now and then until you get the hang of it. As you can see, deze and die correspond to de words, and dit and dat correspond to het words. Maybe to help you remember this, you can notice that the words het, dit, and dat all end in the letter T, so they go together. Now let's look at a few examples to make it easier for you to remember all of these things. Here we have a few trees. In Dutch, that's de boom. So I can choose between deze and die boom. Here I'm standing next to a nice tree. If I want to talk about this tree, I would say deze boom because it's close to me. Now, behind me there's another tree. This time I have to use die because it's far away from me. So when I want to talk about that tree in the background, I have to say die boom. Here I'm walking along a path. In Dutch we say het pad. Because it's here with me, I have to say dit pad. If I want to talk about the path in the distance, I have to use dat pad because it's far away. So now we're talking about a het word. I have to use dit for things close to me and dat for things far away from me. Here's a nice rock. In Dutch we would say de steen. So now, how would you say this rock in Dutch? The answer is deze steen. I have to use deze because steen is a de word, and it's close to me. The rock in the background, however, is die steen because it's further away. In plural, so when you're talking about more than one thing, all words always have de, so you always use deze and die, never dit or dat or het. For example, deze bomen, close to me, or die bomen in the background. Or, for example, those people in the background. In Dutch, we can say de mensen or de mannen, the people or the men. I can say die mensen or die mannen because they're far away, and it's in plural, so it's always a de word. You might have noticed that in Dutch we sometimes put je behind a word to say that it's small or cute. All words that end in je are always het words, even if the original word is a de word. For example, de boom, like we saw before, becomes het boompje, the little tree. This little tree is close to me, so I have to say dit boompje. If it's far away, then it becomes dat boompje. Remember that before we said die boom, because boom is a de word. However, boompje is a het word, so I have to say dat boompje. Of course, we don't use dit and dat and deze and die in isolation. You use them in full sentences. So let's look at a few sentences to make this a little more realistic. For example, this is my coat, and my coat is de jas in Dutch. If I want to say that this coat is warm, I would say deze jas is warm. Why? Because it is de jas. So if I want to say this coat, I have to choose between deze and die. Well, it's close to me, it's on me right now, so I cannot say die jas, which would be far away, so I say deze jas. Deze jas is warm. Deze jas is warm. Fortunately, because it's a pretty cold day. Another example would be, these pants are red. It's de broek, so we would have to say, deze broek is rood. Deze broek is rood. So that's all there is to it. You've got two more words in English, and the trick is knowing if it's a de or a het word. So that's something you really need to study. When you learn a new word, always learn if it's a de word or a het word, because it's essential for dit, dat, deze, and die, for adjectives, for all kinds of things. So it's always good to study that when you learn a new word. This video was made possible thanks to the people who support me on Patreon. If you also want to leave me a little tip to thank me for the videos, or if you want to continue growing this project and help me make more videos in the future, please consider becoming a member on my Patreon page. The link is in the description and on screen right now. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.